And moving on to our next keynote speech, we're very excited about this one. We will have Ralph Haupter, President of Europe, Middle East and Africa at Microsoft, discussing the cloud's role in driving both sustainability and growth. Now, Ralph brings more than 25 years of experience in the tech sector, including almost a decade with Microsoft Asia. Today, Ralph will be discussing how the tech giant aims to achieve carbon neutrality while unlocking new growth opportunities. Ralph, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Very nice to meet Greta.
Great. And you can take away your presentation.
Oh, lovely. Okay. So hello, everybody, and thanks for having the opportunity joining this wonderful event you're hosting here. Maybe very briefly, my name is Ralph Haupter. I'm a German fellow, president of Microsoft EMEA, and found it exciting contributing here for a couple of minutes with a perspective on how we think having impact on the challenge of carbon and ESG and how that actually then influences technology and usage of technology. Maybe to start, so the context for us as a company is really that we kind of put the point in place where we say we want to be carbon negative by 2030. And by that time, we will actually start remove our footprint from the environment which we're putting in. And then also we kind of went and said by 2050, we want to be in a place where we have removed all carbon environmental impact we ever did. And that will have obviously impact on one of the big themes here, which is the context of using electricity. So we really as a company focus very much to be carbon negative. But beside carbon, we also focus on what we do on water, what we do on waste. And we just recently also went into a planetary computing environment where we really want to take care on world's biodiversity and use AI and technology to do that one. Now, if you look at our sustainability report, you see us forecasting that in the first half, we reduced our carbon emission by 730,000 metric tons. And we purged for removal another 1.3 million metric tons by focusing on 26 different projects. It's a small step, I would say, and a lot of that one is also maybe contributed on the fact that COVID has changed our commute and usage. But it's an important one that I feel we are now in a space where we start reporting and documenting what we're doing. It's important for us as a company to understand, that touches our joint topic here to some extent, that data centers consuming roughly 4% of world's economy going forward. And as we understand, there is more compute power needed and more organizations want to really take the benefit out of digital. We will have more to come and more energy consumption. And we also need to innovate on how we use and how we leverage technology to reduce the carbon emission by still knowing that we need more energy. And so if you just look at examples, we understand that half of the energy we need for cooling. And so as one of the experiments we're doing is we actually put subsea data centers in place. So really trying to have natural cooling elements on the usage of data centers so that when we go on these real big projects, putting data centers in place, we just leverage this type of technology and innovation. Now, then you go on and ask yourself, what else can we do and where do we go? For us as a company, it's also important that we made a statement that everybody in the company has attention and focus on what we do as a carbon footprint. And so I think it's public knowledge that by July, basically Thursday, the executive payment is determining on the carbon footprint. So there's a real connection between what we say as a company, how the outcome is as a company, and how we have performance rating on our executives, which I think is pretty important. We also are focusing on shifting from fossil fuels We also have a whole set of partnerships on where we really take care on what our carbon-free emission is looking like and how we can drive that one. We have over the last years been always focusing on scope 1 and scope 2 footprint on the carbon side. We have actually a calculation within the company where we are kind of putting a tax on the carbon footprint. And we're now doing the same for scope 3 emissions. So we're really focusing on the full ecosystem, being visible on what the carbon footprint is, how technology is helping, and where energy is used. So it's an important one. We feel that the company is end-to-end aligned and really goaled and structured in that journey of our mission on getting carbon neutral. We've also focused and doubled down the work on removing carbon from the environment. So we recently purchased the removal of 1.3 million metric tons from 15 different suppliers in 26 projects around the world. We have put a massive RFP in place with a goal to put out 1 million metric tons of carbon. We actually got almost 200 different projects as proposals out of 40 different countries. And this would really represent right now a 55 million carbon removal of the year. But it's just giving us the magnitude we need to have and really understand the portfolio. We can to leverage the carbon reduction, but also gives us a perspective on going forward where we can use and put technology in and where we jointly can have impacts in market. Now, then that brings us to a phase of innovation and really joint learning around the world on what is possible. It's a massive step which needs to be done. It's a super important one, but super complicated and massive. And so that's the biggest program we ever launched as a company. And I think that's the biggest annual carbon removal program any company ever has done. And so all with the direction to deliver our commitment, and all in the context of being in the leading edge of energy consumption in electricity when you think us going on these data centers. Now, accelerating the journey, it's clear that we need to have a solution. We as a society, but also we as a company need to have a solution which is short and long term. And so we have put a fund together, as you may have seen, which is the Climate Innovation Fund. There's $1 billion in that one, focusing on the challenges of carbon footprints. And so we now also investing in direct air capture. That's just one of these projects. But this is the philosophy behind that one, where we say we want to have really the capability to invest and research these new projects and ideas on how we can have impact and reduce the energy consumption and reduce the carbon footprints. I would say we've seen many companies around the world launching sustainability initiatives and programs. When I would say they are across the world, but it's fast great to see the companies like Starbucks or Maersk or Cemex, Apple, Stripe, they all have put progress and investments in place. But they all have also, interestingly enough, an ask to us. So our customers really want to understand and work with us on how we can help them reach their own sustainability commitments as part of their digital transformation. And that's, I would say, one of the key themes we have today with executives on boards on how we really help companies who know they need to go on digital, how we immediately, through that transformation of using technology in a different way, help them reduce their carbon footprint, calculate the reduction, moving away from an own data center, calculating the reduction by using different technology and functionality. Super important. We see the need not only on the technology side, but we see the need also on the society. 1 billion people globally still working and living without clean energy in developed markets. And access to energy is the driver for human well-being and economical development. And so having that one aligned with our mission, empowering every person and organization on the planet, is really the source of how we think of that one and using technology. Now, the technology and the expertise of the energy sector players, we think can help accelerate the energy transition quite a bit. So you have seen us in intense partnerships with big energy producing companies, utility companies. And most of these partnerships are in the core of using technology on cloud computing, using technology of artificial intelligence, and using technology on IoT-based integration. And so you see across the planet, actually, all big players, but even more interesting, startups, kind of companies like gridX going on leveraging the technology in this burning issue on addressing energy consumption, optimizing energy consumption, and having a green energy available and reducing carbon footprint. So the digital innovation on that side, on really building new business model, expanding, I would say, the transition to renewable energy is super high. So the energy companies across industries are using tech tools more and more. And they really look about how to explore and develop that stuff. And so the decisions and strategies to make energy cleaner and more reliable and more affordable is the core of that discussions which we're having and exploring around the globe. Technology and the direction where you're going on having really remote systems, having digital tech supporting the operational. Then if you go on the energy side, integrating renewable into the grids, where you would say catching solar generating points, catching wind points, installations, bringing them in traditional utility infrastructures is one of the tasks which we are seeing at hand, and where we as a technology platform company with our partners see being able to make a difference. And then you have, I would say, another set which is in the existing operating of grids, where it's all about preventing usage and demand, but also going into real grid infrastructure and maintaining infrastructure, having monitoring capabilities. All that one is really on the tech edge to take care on cleaner energy. Now, among electricity producers and utilities, where they have already, I think we have in the mid-80s% of them using IoT tech and reducing modern stuff. We also see an increased demand on the employees and the real kind of staff community working there and driving for better customer experience, which is a big thing as well, and the big demand on how society really gets access to renewable energy. And so we're expecting a massive boost on what we do on automation right now. We're seeing the boost based on AI, machine learning backed technology in this one. And we also kind of feel that this is opening then in a real quality way what I described before, where we say, how can we actually reduce consumption, but also reduce then or have massive environmental impact, if you see what I mean. Now, the way for us is really making sure that we are with partners part of that energy transition through innovation and help the sector, the technology sector, to leverage best of breed in markets by countries, what is really possible. And I would say this is then where a company like gridX is for us just an exciting way to look at the joint opportunity, right? that's the agility and the speed we see and the innovation power of small companies targeting on their differentiation, on their value position, playing, I think, a very important role in the specifics, in your case, on managing endpoints efficiently, combining demands and bringing that together. And having just a very technology-driven point of view on how you bring the signals together and the technology together across different existing environments and platforms. For us, seeing how disconnected distributed energy components come together on a single platform, I think that's a big step change in what we're seeing. So having the networks, but then having visibility on the contributors on the different platforms. And then we, as a company, feel always excited in this context because we are very clear that our benefit is being a technology and platform provider, and then having specialized capabilities from companies like gridX, in combination with our experienced relationship and partnerships on utility companies, as much as consumer-based companies, as much as production companies. Just having that ingredients together and capability together, I think, is a unique point of differentiation and benefit going forward. Our partnerships with energy customers and partners is a long-standing one, and I think it's important that you see that on a global basis, how we work with them. But it's one of the partnerships, I would say, which is seeing the most transformational and most focused change within an industry. Really kind of all on a global basis on path to reimagine their business models and how to have going forward a path on being in that context of a carbon neutral environment and being an energy provider, what their role is and how they play. And so we had a great example where with Northern Lights, we have been able, together with the Norwegian government, with Equinor, with Shell and Total, to actually land a project where we try to figure out with technology how we actually can store and capture the carbon footprint. So that's one of the most exciting and innovative ones which we see right now in this very specific area of carbon management and carbon storage. And it's just for us great to see how we bring government organizations, energy companies and technology together and really think deep and apply technology to the best what is possible. And this project is really with the aim to explore how to capture and transport CO2 from an industrial emissions standpoint and then store it safely without releasing that one to the atmosphere. A big endeavor, I would say, a lot to learn, work and test, but just needed on the given time in society and even needed the given challenges we have. And so in our specific case, we really take the full digital responsibility, I would say, on these Northern Lights projects and put in our best capabilities on tech and want to make sure that this is part of our going forward engineering capabilities as well, and a standard capability which we'll bring forward to other companies. And so closing out, I just wanted to make sure we really give the context on how important it is for us as a technology company to be in a place where we lead, not having solved everything, but with a clear mindset on clear goals, that it is something which is kind of ingrained in our corporate culture, in our kind of incentive structure, I would almost say, but in deeply in our operating model ingrained. And then at the same time, having a clear understanding how we can be a platform for partners and a platform for industry partners and technology partners. It's very clear that we need to ensure the sustainability on our planet presents the challenge, which we cannot solve by ourselves. It cannot be solved by a single government. It cannot be solved by a single organization. So having this a coercive mindset is for us key in this one. We have in our vision statement that we want to be a platform to empower organizations across the planet. So for us, this is a global task we have and want to solve and focus for. And therefore, we also want to empower partners like gridX to be globally available and globally on the tech, which we think is making the difference. We need to go that path because the demand will be there through technology on energy, but the demand will also be there for improving lives of human beings, and that will ask for more energy. And so we need to be even more focused and concentrated how to solve that problem. We are all in for the net zero outcome, and we look for these partnerships and committed to this journey. And so we look ahead and think through that one from a technology perspective and how we shape this sector of energy, how we can help being this platform company on shaping this sector of energy. And so that was the reason why I was excited to be invited today to give a short context on how we Microsoft think and why it is important for us that companies like gridX step forward and think on from a technology perspective on how to solve the problem, because we are convinced that it needs everybody. And we want to be here with everybody on solving that problem for the society. So thank you very much for giving me that short chance to share the context and share the excitement and commitment we have as Microsoft for the partnership as much as for solving for the problem. Thank you, Greta.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Ralph. It's really interesting to get an insight on Microsoft's perspective and some of the projects that you're involved in. Just a few questions now to follow up on that. How does Microsoft ensure that carbon emissions are reduced along the entire value chain or capital energy consumption? That is, the indirect emissions that come from hardware manufacturing and infrastructure as well.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Greta, we have now really gone and basically put scope 3, which is supply chain, into our measurements. And we have, so to say, a transfer price on how much an organization needs to pay back to a central pool of funding, depending on which footprint they generate by using supply chain. That is reasonably new. But we have that engagement now in a way operationalized, that it's not only a piece of paper, but now it's really, as an organization, part of your P&L, which is taking care on how you engage and which supplier you have and which footprint you generate with your supply chain.
And Microsoft is obviously a leader in this area. Have you seen any sort of flow-on effect from other companies since Microsoft announced its goal of becoming carbon negative by 2030?
I would say it's exciting to see around the globe more and more companies just keen and interested to have a very specific dialogue on how the ESG footprint actually can be adjusted or can be changed or can be improved. I have the opportunity to be in WBSG, in the board of that organization, which is taking care on climate and energy projects. And it's very visible that worldwide the attention on how commercial companies can reduce the carbon footprint is very relevant. I think the how, and especially how to measure, is right now most probably what I would say the biggest challenge for each company. And so from our side, we have really taken an approach forward where we want to be able to give companies data, and based on their data, a capability to judge their improvements or judge their carbon footprint. One of the easier one, which we did at the beginning, is really helping companies to understand what is the reduction of the footprint when they use their compute power and move it to a cloud environment. So there is a massive reduction in that one, just because you work at scale. We have optimized the back end. We are running data centers more and more with green power. So just by going on this cloud infrastructure, we have seen companies taking huge benefit. And that was a first step to have really going and working on platforms which enable companies to collect their data, not only what they do with us on the data center, but collect their data on all their energy consumption devices, all their fabrication locations. And by collecting data, then being able to really judge and assess what the footprint is and how to optimize. So to your question, Greta, I think there's a strong movement, a strong debate, and the request to us is, as a technology company, help collect the data so that commercial companies and governments, by the way, can make informed decisions on how to optimize for the better outcome.
And we've just had an audience question. I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this alone, but I'm still be interested to get your perspective. Will Microsoft continue partnerships with oil companies such as ExxonMobil?
The purpose for us on these partnerships is giving technology to help them optimize their path on getting in areas where they are reducing fossil-based energy product or use technology to build in new business models. And so that is the purpose of what we're doing when we go with these companies. And we have a lot of references where we help just companies across building on using different energy sources, do different ways of sourcing, optimize usage of energy itself. I mean, taking with governments, reducing loss of power in grids. There's a lot of technology you can use on that one. And so that's the spirit on how we think technology should be used.
And Microsoft has an internal carbon tax, I believe. Do you think measures like this could be adopted by other companies as well?
I would hope so. Again, I'm a deep believer that the moment you start to measure something, you get behavioral change and support curiosity, how change can be done. So I'm an engineer and therefore operating on a basis of data and informed knowledge has always been my principle. And therefore, yes, I think that makes a difference. And the combination of just collecting data, visualizing data, and then maybe find, as we do internally, the right incentive systems to actually pay for even further impact on reducing makes total sense. And I hope and I think firmly other companies can do that as well, for sure.
And Microsoft has been involved in a lot of solar projects and there's a goal to be able 100% renewable energy by 2025. What do you think have been the greatest challenges in this switch to renewables, and how is technology used to overcome them?
It's a great question, and we have a team who's very focused on building our infrastructure out in a way that we use purely renewable energy. I would say, to my best knowledge on this context, the feedback and the experience is that most times just the physical context of where we need energy is the challenge on how we actually make that really renewable. So how do you store in places? Where do you get really renewable energy? And how do you get the renewable energy to the point where you need to use it? This kind of almost geographical or natural environment challenges are the ones which I think is the most complicated one, because then you go immediately in technology problems on storing and optimizing energy. which people are working on. But just having the physicals right, being with a technology location on the most optimized place where you need to have the least cooling, where you get maybe the highest impact through solars, that combination getting done well. To my best knowledge from my colleagues from the other team who built that data centers is one of the biggest challenge.
Mm-hmm. And we've had a question from the audience. You did definitely touch on some projects such as the Northern Lights project, which sounded really interesting. But they asked if there were any other kind of more interesting projects that Microsoft is involved in accelerating the energy transition. Maybe in Germany, if you know any, otherwise in the EMEA region.
Yeah, I mean, would be very happy to touch on them because they're in different stages and phases. And as I said, we put a $1 billion in a fund where we focus on all these kind of innovation projects. So if there is interest from anybody in getting connected to a team or in a specific country or on a specific technology, where to work on what, please feel free to send me an email. I will make sure that we connect you because it matters in which country you talk about which problem you want to solve. In many cases, and so helping you to be at the right place would be my priority. But I hope with just the context I gave you, what we do on the technology side, as much as where we invest in building platforms and funds, making funds available for innovation, that gives you a sense that we are quite active in that area in multiple dimensions.
Us to the end of the session, but thank you so much, Ralph, for taking the time out today. As I said, it was really enlightening, and yeah, we'd really appreciate you coming to join us.
Oh, thank you very much. I hope you have a great event. I wish you all the best, and if there is any question, please always feel free to reach out. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks. That brings us to the end of the first session for today. We'll be having now a 45-minute break, lunch break, go get some snacks, have some water, and then we'll be back at 2:15 p.m. Central European Time to talk about the platform economy. See you then.